It was a day like any other, or so I thought. I woke up to the shrill ringtone of my alarm clock, its obnoxious sound piercing through the thin walls of my tiny apartment. With a groan, I rolled out of bed and stumbled to the bathroom, still half asleep. As I reached for my towel, something felt different. My reflection in the mirror was not quite right. My chest seemed smaller and my features somehow softer. I paused, blinking in confusion. As I stood there, transfixed by the unfamiliar sight before me, my phone continued to ring unanswered. Finally, it fell silent, and I heard a light knock on my door. "Hey, are you awake in there?" called out my roommate, Chris. "We're going to be late for work if you don't get a move on." I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand what had happened. But one thing was certain. My life had just taken an unexpected turn. As I hesitantly opened the door, Chris's eyes widened in surprise. "Dude," he exclaimed, "what happened to your—" He trailed off, searching for the right word. I couldn't find the words to explain. Instead, I simply stood there, my heart racing, as my roommate stared at me in confusion and disbelief. We stood there in silence, the weight of the unspoken question hanging heavily between us. Finally, Chris spoke up. "Dude, do you want to talk about it?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand what had happened. But one thing was certain. My life had just taken an unexpected turn. And as I stood there, dressed in my magical new attire, I knew that I would never be the same again. Do you want to talk about it?" Chris asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. I swallowed hard, still struggling to comprehend the reality of my situation. I don't really know, I replied, my voice trembling slightly. I just woke up and this is how I am. I feel different. Like I'm in someone else's body. Chris shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. "I'm sure there's a logical explanation for this, dude. Maybe you should see a doctor or something." He paused, studying my face, and then asked, Are you okay with this, though? With being different?" I couldn't meet his eyes as I replied, "I don't know. I mean, I've always felt a little bit off, I guess. Like I was born in the wrong body. And now I feel like maybe this is what I was meant to be all along. But what about work? And your family? They're going to freak out when they see you like this," Chris persisted. "They're not going to understand." His words cut deep, but somehow they also felt right. I knew that my life was about to change in ways I couldn't even begin to comprehend. But standing there in the doorway, surrounded by the familiarity of my old life, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. A peace that came from knowing that, for better or for worse, I was finally starting to become who I was always meant to be. As we left for work, Chris walked beside me in an uncomfortable silence. I could tell he was struggling to accept what had happened, but he also seemed to understand that there was nothing he could do to change it. We caught the bus and made our way through the bustling city, my new body drawing curious glances and whispered comments from the other passengers. But I barely noticed them, lost in my own thoughts about what the future might hold. At the office, my colleagues were understandably surprised to see me dressed in a feminine attire. They exchanged glances and whispers as I walked down the hall, my heart racing with fear and anticipation. I wasn't sure how they would react, but I knew that I couldn't keep this secret from them for long. As I sat down at my desk, my phone buzzed with messages and notifications. Friends and family members were reaching out, some offering support, others expressing confusion and even anger. But through it all, one message stood out. A text from my mother, simply saying, "Come home. We need to talk." I knew that this conversation was inevitable, but I wasn't quite ready for it yet. Throughout the day, I found myself withdrawing into my own thoughts, struggling to come to terms with the reality of my situation. My focus drifted during meetings, and my work began to suffer as I struggled to concentrate on anything other than the way my body felt against the seat of my chair. At lunchtime, I excused myself and made my way to the bathroom, taking a moment to examine myself in the mirror. The reflection staring back at me was no longer the person I once was. It was someone new, someone who was still trying to figure out who they were supposed to be. As the day drew to a close, I finally summoned the courage to call my mother. She didn't sound angry, exactly, but there was a note of sadness and confusion in her voice that cut me to the core. We arranged to meet at my childhood home, and as I walked through the familiar streets, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss for the life I had left behind. But at the same time, there was an undeniable sense of hope and anticipation for the future that lay ahead. As I approached the house, I saw my mother standing on the porch, her face etched with concern. She opened the door before I could even reach it, her arms wrapped tightly around me in a hug that felt more like a lifeline. "I'm so sorry, honey," she whispered. "I don't know what to say." I held her close, taking comfort in her familiar scent and the rhythmic rise and fall of her chest against my own. "It's okay, Mom," I replied, my voice wavering. "I just need you to understand." And then, for the first time since I had awoken this morning, I found the words to say what I'd been feeling for so long. I think this is who I'm supposed to be." As the words left my lips, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. My mother pulled back, studying my face, and then she smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was a smile nonetheless. "I've always known that you were special," she said. "And I think you're right. You deserve to be happy, no matter what that means." We stood there on the porch, the evening air cool against our skin, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them with the love and support of my family by my side. And as I walked back out into the world, my new life unfolding before me, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and determination. Because no matter what anyone else said, no matter how strange or uncomfortable it might be, I was going to be true to myself. And that was all that mattered. As I drove away from my childhood home, a sense of liberation washed over me. I was no longer bound by the expectations of others or the constraints of my own mind. I was free to explore this new identity, to discover who I truly was and what I wanted out of life. The sun was setting as I pulled into my favorite spot along the riverbank, the sky ablaze with hues of orange and pink. I climbed out of my car, breathing in the fresh air and feeling the warmth of the earth beneath my feet. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. I stretched out on the grass, closing my eyes as the sound of the river gently lapping against the shore lulled me into a state of relaxation. In this moment, I felt no regret, no fear, only peace. And as I lay there, I knew that this was just the beginning. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky above me, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. There was one message I needed to send before I could truly move on. I opened the messaging app and composed a short note, letting her know that I was finally happy and that she didn't need to worry about me anymore. With a deep breath, I hit send and watched as the words disappeared into the ether. And then, as if to seal the deal, I changed my name on all of my social media profiles, removing the last vestiges of my old identity. It was a symbolic act, but it felt significant nonetheless. I was no longer who I used to be. I was someone new, someone who was ready to embrace this life with all its joys and challenges. As the night deepened and the world around me fell silent, I lay there, lost in thought. Tomorrow would bring its own set of problems and adventures, but for tonight, I was content to simply be. Because in this moment, with the entire universe at my fingertips, I finally felt like I belonged. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all. Thank you so much for watching till now. It means the world to have you here. This community is all about empowering each other and celebrating the incredible journeys of everyone on their path to living authentically. If you're ever feeling lost or alone, remember you have a whole family here for you. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and let's keep inspiring each other, sending you all the love and strength in the world. Until next time, live your life by your rules.